Hi, hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to today's video, which is a bit of a June TBR slash pile of possibilities. When I made my return to the channel a couple months ago, I said I really wasn't going to be doing TBRs as to not put pressure on myself. But I also said I wouldn't be hosting or participating in any readathons, and we see how well that went. So I did want to, because I am co-hosting the historical fiction readathon in the month of June, talk about some of the books in my pile of possibilities for that, as well as some of the books that I'm trying to prioritize reading for Pride Month. It's a lot of historical fiction. I think every single book that I'm talking about is historical fiction, and I'm really excited about it. You guys know historical fiction is my jam, so I have a lot of books for that. So why don't we dive right in? So the first book that I want to talk about is the one that I'm already actively reading, and I'm about 25% in. And that is The Light Years by Elizabeth Jane Howard. This has been an NRN, not right now, book for me on multiple occasions, and I am so glad that I have actually picked it up again because I am enjoying it. It is very cozy. It's the first book in a series. I think there are 5 books in the series about the Cazalet family, and so this one is really introducing you to the ensemble cast. You have the POVs of characters from kind of every generation, from children up to senior citizens. You also have the perspectives of some of the staff working for this family. So it gives you a little like upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey vibes, but it is set in the late 1930s. And currently the family is all descending on Home Place, which is kind of their like country estate. I will say not a whole lot has happened as of right now. You are just getting to know the characters and they are just arriving at Home Place. But I'm hoping to use this for the prompt to read about a specific event, because I do believe that the latter portion of this book is set during the Phony War. I think it was 8 months or so after the Nazis had invaded Poland. Britain and France have declared war, but there isn't actually much action happening on the front, so I believe this book tackles some of that, which is a less common period for me to read about in historical fiction, especially World War II. Usually you're kind of in the thick of it. So really enjoying this. It is feeling cozy. I'm loving the characters and their voices thus far. It is really around the 3 brothers and their families, as well as the spinster sister Rachel. So looking forward to seeing where this takes me. Can you guys hear the rain? It is like pouring right now. Holy cow. But anyway, the next book is I Am Madam X by Gioia Diliberto, and I'm sorry about the glare from my light. But this is the book that I am reading for the Read a Historical Fiction about a remarkable real person. And so this is a book about Virginie, who is the subject of this famous portrait by John Singer Sargent that caused a huge scandal. In case anyone doesn't know about the scandal of this portrait of Virginie, essentially John Singer Sargent painted it with one of the straps of her dress like hanging off her shoulder, and that was considered too provocative, and he ends up correcting it and putting it back on her shoulder because the public freaks out about it. So this is set in France, kind of Belle Epoque era, and I'm looking forward to it. Next is the book that I'm planning to read for the prompt that's a historical fiction about the arts. And so this is The Color Storm by Damien Dibben. And first of all, this cover just does it for me. I will just put it out there. But it is, as it says here, a novel of Renaissance Venice. And apparently this kind of down on his luck painter, who has a bunch of debts piling up, is in Venice, and there is this rumor that there's this like new pigment that has been brought to Venice by this very, very wealthy man, and our main character ends up being chosen to paint the portrait of his wife. So there's a lot to do with the pigment here. There's seems to be stuff about the marriage of the two wealthy individuals, as well as a lot of intrigue around the painter. Don't know a whole lot about it other than what I've read on the back. I haven't seen this book talked about before, so I am very intrigued to read this one. And yes, I have said intrigued like a million times. Next, I want to get into the books that I've selected because they are LGBTQ+, and it is Pride Month. They are all historical fiction, and I will say it was refreshing how easy it was to find these books, both on my shelf and just in general. I love historical fiction. You guys know this, but I am the first one who will say that it has not necessarily been the most inclusive genre. I think there was a lot of work to be done across many genres, but historical fiction had its problems. And I feel like in the last 5 or so years, that has definitely changed. You're seeing a lot more historical fiction that is just from different cultures, different religious, racial, sexual orientation perspectives. It's nice. So I have quite a few here that I'm going to try to tackle. So the first book that I want to talk about in that LGBTQ plus range of books that I have is one that's potentially going to be for the readathon as well. My prompt for the readathon was a dual timeline, and then I was struggling to actually find a dual timeline in my TBR, both physical and kind of my list on Libby and all of that. However, I do think this one might work. I'm not entirely sure. Like, it might not, but we're gonna give it a shot. That is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. I've read Nell Stevens' nonfiction. She wrote a memoir, The Victorian and the Romantic, that I really enjoyed. Haven't read her fiction though, and I'm intrigued. The reason I think that this might have a dual timeline is because the main character's name is Blanca, and she is a ghost that's been haunting this village for centuries, and she falls madly in love with George Sands, who is staying in the village circa 1838. So I'm thinking that in order to give a backstory to Blanca the ghost, they are going to have to send us back several hundred years to when she was actually alive. I don't know if that actually happens. We might just be dealing with the haunting. But regardless, it is a really interesting premise about the main character being a ghost. And I love that kind of thing. We'll see how that actually goes. But what I love is that one of my, fave authors gave the book a blurb, a gorgeous, wildly seductive novel shimmering with intelligence, humor, and joy. I adored this book. That's what Sarah Waters said about it. And then the next book on my TBR is a Sarah Waters book, Affinity. And this is the last of the Sarah Waters books that I have to read, which means Sarah Waters, if you're listening, I need more novels, please. And thank you. But this is set in the Victorian era. The main character, Margaret, decides she wants to do good works, and she decides the place that she wants to do them is one of London's most notorious prisons for female criminals, and she is drawn like a moth to a flame to one of the inmates. So this sounds right up my alley. Sarah Waters is an LGBTQ plus author, and most of her books, with the exception of one that I've read thus far, have dealt with sapphic historical storylines. So this one I don't think is going to be much of a departure from that. I'm intrigued. I love her writing. I love the gothic tones and texture and just richness. She is someone who does a lot of research. She loves talking about the misfits and outcasts, and I just love it. They're great slow burns with usually some fantastic plot twists. So that's another book that I am hoping to read this month. As I said, will I get to all of these books? Probably not, but we'll see. We'll see. The next book that I'm going to be reading as an audiobook is The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. I am butchering that name, and I apologize. This book was put on my radar by my friend Liz. I adore her. We have very, very different tastes in books. However, most of the time when she doesn't like something, I like it, and when I like something, she doesn't like it. She described this book as very weird historical fiction set in the Netherlands, and then, like, after she told me, Britt, you need to read this so that I have someone to talk about it to and with, I was on Substack and someone reviewed it, and I was like, ew, this book is apparently everywhere, and I've been missing out, supposedly. Also, before I go into this book, shameless plug for my Substack. If you want women-centered books, history, culture, essays, that sort of thing, go ahead and subscribe to Vox Femina Books. It is completely free, and you will get a letter from me weekly. So yeah, okay, plug done. But basically, this book is set in the 1960s in the Netherlands. It's post-war, so it seems like, you know, everyone is finally feeling like the war is behind them. The, you know, scars to the land and the cities and the countryside are starting to heal. And the main character is living in her mother's old house when her brother and his girlfriend just decide, like, we're staying for the season. And so it seems like sparks and things start to fly between the girlfriend and the sister, and they seem to be like opposites attract sort of thing. So I want to know what makes it weird. Also, the Substacker that I was talking to, she said there was like a big reveal, and now I really want to know. And the last book on my TBR is a book whose title I'm just struggling with today. All of You, Every Single One by Beatrice Hitchman, and I'm intrigued by this book. It is another LGBTQ plus novel. It is more historical fiction. It's set over the course of several decades, like 1910 to 1946 in Vienna. So I'm assuming you're gonna have World War I, the interwar years, and then World War II touched upon here. But the cast of characters are queer women, from at least what I can tell from the description on the back of the book. One of them is Julia Lindquist, and she is unhappily married to a Swedish playwright when she runs off with a tailor named Eve, and they settle in Vienna. And then there's another character who's based out of Vienna, it seems like, Ava, who is struggling with mutism, and she's sent to Dr. Freud, of all people. I haven't heard much about this book, but there's something about it. There's so many questions I have about how these three characters that I mentioned, like, create a cohesive story, how it's told over the course of, you know, several decades, how the wars are handled, if they figure largely in this book, I don't know. But I have a lot of questions, and I'm interested to see how that's handled by this author. So that is on my TBR too. So yeah, those are the books on my pile of possibilities for June. All historical fiction. Every last one of them. And that makes me happy. I am in my happy place. But yeah, we'll see how many of these I actually get through when I film my wrap up at the end of the month. But yeah, let's do the thing. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure that you hit the thumbs up too. Leave a comment. It takes all of 2 seconds, but it means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!